And we're live. Well, not live, but coming straight out of the Building Performance Association's National Home Performance Conference. This one's a full circle moment for me. This was the very first conference I ever attended, and now HVAC ADHD is one of a few inaugural podcasts brought in to cover it. Man, that's just wild to me. So for this episode, we sat down with two guys at completely different stages of the same journey. Hal Smith, who's been doing this for over 4 decades and built a powerhouse in home performance. And John Whitehead, who's right in the middle of making the transition from traditional HVAC into the home performance world. This conversation is exactly what this conference is all about. Real experience, real evolution, and real talk about where the industry is going. If you're still sizing systems off gut feel, or you're starting to question everything you were taught, you're going to want to hear this one. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the HVAC ADHD Vodcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Begley. Today we're going to be talking with Hal Smith and John Whitehead. Hal is a longtime contractor in the home performance space and has done some amazing things with his business. We'll let him tell you about that as we get down that road. John is a first-time HVAC home performance contractor. He just started turning his HVAC business model into the home performance contracting business model and bringing that in. So the idea of the conversation today that we're trying to create with Hal and John is just the man that's been doing it forever, the OG with all the knowledge, passing that torch down to somebody who's just getting into the business in modern times, because Hal has seen this business change over the years in ways that many people probably did not, because of how long he has stuck with it and what he's turned it into. So without further ado, I'm going to let these two introduce themselves and we'll go from there. Hal, take it away.
All right. Yeah. So my business is Halco Home Solutions. We do lots and lots of things in upstate New York. We're right between Rochester and Syracuse. We also go down and serve the Ithaca market. It's 23 counties. We have 190 some employees, just shy of 200. We have 125 trucks on the road. Been in business since 1984, so that makes 42 years we've been practicing this. Started as a HVAC, electric, and plumbing business. I was very fortunate to get started at 12 years old. I didn't start my business at 12 years old, but I got entered into the business. So I was on a church youth group trip, and the chaperone was a master plumber, and he took a liking to me, and I became his apprentice at 12 years old. So I took trade school during high school, worked for a company for 4 years, and then I went in business at 22 years old. That was 1984, and 42 years later, here I am. So.
Awesome. John?
Hey, my name is John Whitehead. I'm out of Marshalltown, Iowa, and I've been doing HVAC since 1998. I went to trade school and came out of trade school and started working for other contractors. And 5 years ago, my business partner and I started our business on a heating and cooling. And 3 years ago, we partnered up with NCI and Measure Quick and became high performance contractors. And that was a big evolution for us because we started measuring things that we used to guess about before. And it was a huge transformation for us because prior to that, we were really good at mechanics and seeing the turning on a motor and making the unit make the house comfortable according to customer standards versus analyzing the true comfort level by looking at things such as airflow and humidity and things that go along with that has really been an eye-opener for us. And as of April 1st, I started a new company called Honest Home Performance and Radon Solutions. My main focus in our area is focusing on radon testing and mitigation, and then also offering blower doors and building envelope solutions, and hoping to work with weatherization contractors to solve clients, customers, and improve their comfort and efficiency in their homes. And I'm excited to be on the panel with Jeremy and Hal and be able to find some takeaways that I'm able to go home and implement in my own day-to-day operations.
Thank you, John. Happy to have you in the home performance world. Happy to have you sitting up here with us today. The first question that I'm going to ask today is for Hal. Since you've been doing it for so long, when you first started thinking about bringing home performance into your business as a business model, what was the biggest challenge at that time and being able to bring the home performance world into the HVAC and plumbing world?
Yeah. So, being from New York, and BPI was actually from New York, and they first started targeting New York contractors. So all the contractors around me at that time were much bigger than I was, all started taking these BPI classes. And my brother was my HVAC salesman at that point, and I sent him to BPI class, and he came back and says, "Hell, we don't want anything to do with this nonsense. That's a lot of work. I'm not lugging a blower door around." So I said, okay. So I let it go for about 6 months. And then we started losing some jobs to the contractors that were using BPI. And I said, I got to go to this class myself. And so I took the class, and I just bought in hook, line, and sinker. And my brother's no longer with me because he didn't want to lug a blower door around. But yeah, we just bought into the concept is the home is a system. And you gotta look at the whole picture, not have the blinders on, and just have never looked back. We took all of our sales force and we said, this is the way we're going to do business. And there's some that, did well and stuck with us, and there's some that said, but we just believed in it, and we've marched ahead since.
During that time, was there a lot of incentives at that time to support the work, or what was driving your work then? Did you have to do a lot of marketing, or how were you guys getting the home performance work when you first started out?
Yeah, there were not incentives at that time. It was more just the local competition. In the Rochester market, we had some large players that have now been bought by private equity firms.
Sure. Yeah.
But, it was out competing against them for jobs, that they were saying, hey, we're going to, we'll do this blower door, and so all of a sudden we looked inferior because we weren't doing that. And so that was probably the motivation more than anything.
Okay, so you had some good competition in the New York market because, like you said, BPI is from there. Building Performance, Energy Star for homes originated there. Energy Star for existing homes. I forgot the name. What was that? Energy Star, something out of New York. Anyway, it was an existing home program Energy Star ran at one time, and it came from New York. So there was a lot of support for that and a lot of competition, like Hal was saying. John, what is your biggest challenge right now as you go about bringing home performance into your business model?
Right now, my goal, it really isn't a challenge, because in the circle of building performance, it seems as though the people that know the truth really open the gates. What I've seen in HVAC space is a lot of the people who are gatekeepers are really gatekeeping on rules of thumb and on data that's made out. It's the way their uncle did it, and they're not about to show you the way that they think is the right way. And so for me, my goal is learning proper practices and being in the space with integrity around doing the best way the first time, and not having to come back and say, I learned more, or I did it the wrong way. I am here with the intention, in the first day and a half so far have been very enlightening to learn under people who have decades and decades of this experience, who are just freely opening the gates of knowledge and offering their experience, and to not learn improper practices like I did in HVAC.
Improper practices are something that plagues all these industries: HVAC, installation, electric. Every single one of the trades across the board have improper practices that get done over and over again. That's why this high performance space, as Kyle was saying, excels the way that it does. John, if you had one question for Hal as you're getting started with his years of experience, what do you think that would be? What's one thing, if you're like, man, if I had a guy with 40 years of experience, I would sure like to ask him X. What would, in the context of HVAC to home performance, what do you think that is?
42 years. Okay.
42 going on 43.
Let's say, I would ask you, Hal, what was the biggest eye-opener when you started testing the full envelope as far as ways to improve efficiencies and comfort in homes?
Yeah, I mean, we started from, this is how we did heat loss, heat gains, right? And when you start doing them right, and then you start getting involved in insulating homes, and you realize what the true heat loss, heat gains are, you're going like, wow, oh my gosh, this is, 2/3 less than what, you know, it was telling you. And so it's, I mean, there's just no comparison. I mean, I can't believe there's still contractors out there doing it so sloppily and so wrong, because the information is out there. And I wish more HVAC contractors would understand.
Absolutely. That brings me actually to a couple interesting things. We've been talking a lot about something called permanent load reduction, which is the concept of being able to use a load calculation as a thermal map in the home and go through and expose all the thermal deficiencies of the home, and really integrating that into an HVAC business from a maintenance contract visit customer standpoint sort of concept. And the only reason that that's actually a viable concept right now is because of the LIDAR technology. So that's making a lot of people be able to use these apps like Amply and Conduit Tech, and there's a couple other ones that have came online, and walk through homes and do a load calculation in a fraction of the time that we used to be able to do it. So I say all that to ask Hal, when you first started doing load calculations as a practice, what was the procedure then, and how did you actually work that into your workflow from a day-to-day standpoint?
Well, I mean, we went from the true rule of thumb. Oh, it's, like this, and
Sure.
that's 100,000 feet to your house. I mean, truly from there, and that's how it was done back then.
Sure.
Then we started, for a lot of years, we did block loads, fairly accurate block loads. When today's world with heat pumps, and and you got to size every single room, and you got to come up with a heat loss, heat gain for every single room, not just the block load of the house. So now all of a sudden, you got to go in and sketch out and measure every room in the house. Well, that's a lot of work, and that's the tough job on a no cost estimate, right?
Yep.
So these tools, with our business, we use Amply. We love those guys. Not that the other tools aren't good, but that LIDAR technology that truly just scans that house. You don't have to measure it. You don't have to sketch it. And it gives you a room by room, true heat loss, heat gain per room.
Were you guys doing that, actually going into the house and measuring room for room and everything before the LIDAR, and then you eased into LIDAR like, wow, this is just 1,000-time way better doing it? Or, is there a difference? Or
some of my, call them home solutions experts.
Sure.
Some of them were doing it better than others. Some of them claimed they were doing it room by room, but I found out that there were some shortcuts being taken because it was such a long process. Yep. So, but now, we equip them all with iPad Pros, and they've all got and they can't turn in a job without an Amply.
And John, what are you using, Amply or Conduit?
Yeah, so I can speak to that, Jeremy. 3 years ago at the HVAC School Symposium, company created a relationship with Conduit. Working with Shelby has been a joy, and we made a commitment with Shelby that we would use it on every single job unless there was extenuating circumstances. And we had run into a couple order homes, a couple of other things of undesirable conditions.
Sure.
Where we haven't used it, and actually learned a lot from thermal mass of a hoarder, right? Because the load calculation on an empty home versus the load calculation in the reality of a 0-degree day, right?
Yep.
Calculating the load and a 99% average day, and then figuring in the fact that they've got approximately 17 tons of thermal mass stacked to the ceiling. We actually had an instance where we properly sized the furnace and we put it in on a below zero stretch. And it was 4 days before the furnace actually caught up and warmed up all their treasures.
Oh my goodness.
And so we've actually been scanning homes for 3 years, minus just a couple. And our team has been really awesome about adopting the technology. And I do admire you, Hal, for the years of following the processes. And I knew they were out there. And when we made contact with Alex Meany and looked into his training with Right Soft and seeing the time commitment, not only to do the work, but to properly train, it just made sense for us to use the product from Conduit. And it's been a great relationship.
What is your actual workflow? Like, when do you implement it? Is it at when they're like, oh my God, I need a replacement? Or do you have a way to talk to your customers to go into the home and do that as a preemptive measure just to have on file for when the time comes?
Yeah, that's something we've talked about, is to do that on maintenance with a pre-existing client. However, right now we're rocking just one device. And so right now we do it on proposals, and we do it.
Okay.
Right now we're doing it for free, which I wouldn't advise if you can get around it, because there's clearly a value there.
Yep.
However, for us, the monthly investment and the way that it separates us from our peers in our community, the majority of contractors in our area, like you alluded to, Al, are pretty much sizing it with 3 fingers on the curve. And so we choose that's included in our proposal. We don't share that data. If the customer wants to buy the data, they're welcome to. We haven't had anybody take us up on that yet.
So, Hal, what advice do you have to scaling that type of operation? Like John said, he's using one machine right now, and they're paying. How many people are you running right now, John? Service?
Right now we have 6 people on our team. There's 2 of us that do propose.
So, as those systems grow, do you have any advice to John on how to scale the home inspection portion of it, like as far as being able to get into the home and can regularly do all of the home performance inspection measures and be able to grow that and scale it into the size of company that you have?
Yeah, I think, we don't do a LIDAR scan on every single job. We get called into the job for many different reasons. It might be a replacement water heater that we got called in on. It might be, a new electric panel. So if somebody's interested in a new electric panel, we're not going to do a heat loss, heat gain, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
But anytime there's any interest in an HVAC upgrade or change, then we're, certainly incorporating in the LIDAR scan. We do an energy audit for all of these, because in New York, there's a program that we actually get paid. We tell our customers it's not a free audit. It's simply no cost. And it's no cost because you already paid for it through your utility bill. The system's benefit charge, that $8, $9 they pay every month. So they pay us $250 to do the energy audit. We certainly don't make any money on them, but it becomes, at least we're paid for our time.
Sure.
So, as part of that energy audit, we're doing definitely an air advice, 30-minute report. That's part of it. We're doing a blower door. We're doing thermal imaging camera. So, and then if there's any interest in an HVAC improvement or upgrade, then certainly that LIDAR scan is part of the process.
Perfect. So it sounds like if it's a comfort complaint or an HVAC complaint, then you guys are definitely going to implement the LIDAR. But if it's one of the adjacent businesses, it depends on what the business actually is. Yep. And for you guys, John, you're doing it every proposal that you do.
Yeah, as long as it's a system upgrade.
Yep.
We're doing it on every system.
Do you have any data, or do you have any anecdotal data about how that may have changed the amount of jobs that you're able to win? Do people seem like they're more prone to pick you guys because of the knowledge base that you present to them?
Absolutely. It's definitely a talking point. We also use static pressure profiling. We use the true flow grid on occasion when the ductwork is suspect, and we also do ductwork system evaluation, take the measurements, and then we sit down at the table with the customer. We look at their existing equipment. We look at the scan. We inform them that this is non-biased third party based on accurate measurements, that this is true life data. And then we compare the lack of airflow, because you guys can definitely testify there's not been a system that we've run into yet that was properly sized or had proper amount of duct work. And so it definitely gives us a leg up to start a conversation. And then at the end of it all, if we don't get a deal signed while we're there, our only ask is that they use the knowledge that we've imparted in them to be more educated with the other contractors, and to ask if they are proposing a system that's a ton bigger, how much ductwork do I have? Where are you going to get rid of it?
Smart. I like your approach. That's very
We
smart.
actually have implemented a process just recently where we got the same version of the wholesaler notebooks with our company business card on them. And so when I go to talk to the client, when we go to the basement to do the ductwork survey, I give them the notebook and our company pin with the NCI clipboard, and I take the measurements and I have them write down the data, and then we use the assumed static we use the assumed friction rate of 0.6 to be on the side of caution, and educate them on the fact that the majority of us were taught the wrong way to read the ductilator. We're reading it at a more accurate way, but still not precise. And we empower them. And in most cases, I feel like the majority of our clients have more wisdom in our industry than some of our peers at that point.
That's hilarious. Hal, what is the biggest change that you saw in the industry that you can put a finger on from the time that you started doing home performance to today?
You know, it doesn't stop at home performance. You know, I mean, you go in and there's a lot of companies out there insulating and air sealing homes, but they don't pay any attention to moisture mitigation. So they're throwing mold. So, you know, there's a lot more to the business. People ask me, why the heck do you do gutters? Well, I only do gutters when I do basement waterproofing, and I only do basement waterproofing when I try to mitigate moisture.
Yeah.
So they all go hand in hand.
Sure.
You know, somebody calls me for an estimate on gutters, and they're getting 4 other estimates from the cheapest. You know, that's not the business we're in. We don't do that. We only do gutters when it pertains to our basement waterproofing work, when we're trying to mitigate moisture. But this business it doesn't stop. It keeps you gotta take all these pieces of the puzzle and bring them together. I can say, John, you said you're in the radon business. I bought a fancy new electronic radon test machine, and I was testing it at my home. It was a $25 device, and I would have never in a million years guessed that I had a radon problem in my own home.
You and me both.
I'm not on a hot spot on the map. I have a very dry, very tight, everything's masonry. There's no cracks. And this new device is reading 16 picocuries. And my wife is ready to kill me. She's in the medical profession. So she wasn't happy. But so I said, this device must be garbage. So I went and got a carbon absorption test. And 4 days later, 16 picocuries. I'm going, oh my gosh. Thank goodness, 1 fan with 2 suction points, I'm down to 0.08. So I solved it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So because of that, we're now I equip all my trucks with radon carbon absorption tests, all my technicians, all my installers, they're giving these tests out. So far, we're giving 10 tests out. 3 are coming back with over 4 picocuries.
Holy crap.
So the potential for radon is way more than I ever dreamed out there.
Yeah.
And to speak to that a little bit, Hal, that's something that I've been really picking up on at this conference, is the difference between trending data and spot data. So when we're testing any of these things, humidity or radon or carbon dioxide, we're looking at either a moment in time or a trend.
Yeah.
And so the carbon absorption test, when used properly, when installed properly, when stored properly, when sent properly, has a potential for accuracy. So too does the continuous radon monitor. However, it is only a snapshot in time for the 48-hour mandated period. And any of these tests are best to look at the trending data, right? So if you had a bulk water issue, you would clearly not necessarily need a whole house dehumidifier for the rest of your life. So too is radon. If you have stack effect on a windy day, if you have a deep frost level, if you have a bulk water below the slab issue, it's a trending relationship. And that's something in our industry that a lot of people don't take into account. That's been a real talking point that I've noticed throughout this conference so far is, are we looking at a snapshot in time, or are we looking at a long-term trend? And that's something that's very important with any of the data. A lot of people in our industry who are the snake oil type will point out something that's a temporary inconvenience and come up with a really high dollar permanent fix that really is it's not a cost-effective measurement. And so that's something that's been an eye-opener for me on the radon testing side of things, and also using the data as far as pressure field extension to see that I'm not sacrificing the customer's energy. I'm not costing them an energy penalty.
Sure.
And that's something that since I've met you in the last few years, Jeremy, that I've really started learning a lot about is the Pascal, and looking at, we really only need 5 Pascal of suction. And if we create 20 and we get down to that 0.5 range, we're still wasting 15 Pascal up the block, sucking conditioned air. It went from $100 operating cost a year to a $500 operating cost a year over 20 years.
Wow.
So this conference really opened my eyes to that.
I think, you know, the point that was just made here that Hal started out making and John really drove home is like, it's even connected beyond what we typically assume. Like, we sit here and we talk about home performance, and that's a very specific thing and it means a few things. But like, when you really start looking at the house as a connected whole system, the systems go way beyond even the stuff that we as top level professionals would even, you know, really look at on a day-to-day basis. So like, I applaud both of you for like taking that step and connecting it. And then John, you know, that applying the building science to being able to save energy there, that's a pretty amazing leap that you just made. So I applaud that type of growth. And I think that how you talked about, you guys you keep growing and you just added on or started doing a really unique IAQ program. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so, you know, we're using this Air Advice, the 30-minute test, and it gives, to John's point, it gives us a quick 30-minute look in time. But when we compare that and then we do a 4-day test, they're pretty close most times. So, you know, you're not, whatever you see in that first 30 minutes is a pretty good indication of what you might see for a long-term test. And so that, you know, that just opens up conversations. And if there's some things that are of concern, then we would do, you know, a longer test. But something else that we've just getting into now, my wife, who was a director of nursing for 32 years, joined our company. And we're starting to work with the healthcare industry and customers that are asthmatics, and how to improve the breathing in their own home. And there's money out in New York State to help these customers improve their home. And the whole objection is that they don't have an asthma attack and have to go to the ER. So we're able to take that funding and then also braid that with some of the low income funding that's out there, that we can insulate and air seal homes and do that. But that Empower Plus money doesn't allow us to make some of the changes for better breathing in the home to treat the asthma. So we're very excited, just getting started with this, to pair those two things together and really make a bigger difference in the homes.
I heard you talking about that earlier, and that's why I kind of brought it up. To me, it's like such an amazing thing. I can remember back when they were starting to formulate Obamacare, they did a bunch of studies on sick building syndrome and school-age children, and they took a data set of school-age children, and they said, these kids miss school more than anybody else due to health reasons. Let's look at what those health reasons are. And then when they started digging into it, they found, hey, it's not anything that we can put our finger on. Let's go look at the home. And then they called in energy auditors into the home, and they came into the home, and then they said, we need to do a study on this. So they started a small sample study where they actually started fixing the homes and still monitoring the children and seeing how much school they missed in correlation with the home being weatherized and the IAQ improved and everything like that. And lo and behold, the kids' school the amount of times that the kids missed school for being sick went way down. Some of them almost to nothing. So they were just getting ready to put into the part of Obamacare. The thing they were trying to do is exactly what he's talking about here, is like get Medicare to first get involved and send a nurse out to the home, and then have a professional like Hal's group come out to the home and do an evaluation and fix the home, fix the sick building syndrome, and then the kids aren't sick anymore. It's not IAQ problems, it's not allergy problems, it's not sickness problems, it's not carbon monoxide problems. Because one thing about CO a lot of people don't realize is that it, at low levels in children, it manifests just carbon monoxide poisoning, and the sickness manifests just like colds and stomach flus and things like that do. So a lot of these kids could have been having these symptoms from water heaters not venting properly, or all this different stuff that's going on and on and on in the home, and they're just never getting better, and they're always missing school. To me, hearing him say that that's now a program in New York, it blew my mind. It's like a big deal. And I think that other people, like including, John, as you move up in your home performance world, and everybody else should really start thinking about how they can do what these guys are doing, or how they can bring that program to their community, because it is a next level service that can solve a lot of problems for people if you figure out how to fund it the right way. So that's a little bit of a soapbox, but I was just blown away by them doing that program there.
Jeremy, I can jump on that box a little bit too. Since we joined up with National Comfort Institute, every single furnace that we maintenance, we do a full combustion analysis on. All of our technicians carry personal CO alarms. We do sell low-level carbon monoxide alarms. It was an eye-opener. And for those of you in the room who don't know, the actual big box carbon monoxide alarms will not go off until 70 parts per million, and not until after 1 to 4 hours of exposure. So what that means in plain English is that you could be exposed to 69 parts per million for your full life legally. They meet the standard. However, if they don't pass the threshold of 70, they're not required to alarm. And there's been a lot of studies and a lot of tests done where people in the other room here, some of the vendors have actually taken those alarms and put them in bags with over 100 parts, and they didn't go off for 6 to 8 hours. And so my advice to anybody in the room or anybody listening to this on the internet is to make an investment in your own health and have a low-level CO alarm. Our NSI 6000 monitors alert at 15 parts per million after 5 minutes of exposure. And when we deliver those to our clients, we advise them to take them everywhere because they're battery controlled. I even say take it to bingo. Since they don't smoke there anymore, they won't be phoned up.
How long have you been coming to this conference now? How many years? When was your first? Do you remember your first one?
10 years, I'm guessing.
10 years. And over the 10 years, what keeps you coming back? Like, why do you come back year after year?
I always learn something every single time.
That's the amazing thing about this group right here. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you come to these conferences, and especially this one, I tell everybody this, like, I'm not saying it because I'm here. Like, I've said this many, many times in my life. Like, this conference is from a learning perspective, like where you want to come to learn and get the most value from it. This is the conference. There's other ones out there that put a lot of fluff in it because they need marketing dollars. And, you see the trade-off. Like, we don't have some of the cool, fancy food and all that stuff here, but like what you do have is a different type of food that's feeding you in a much better way. So like, sometimes, the trade-off is the trade-off, but this particular conference provides that type of education to new and old folks alike. And on that note, John, so far, what's the best thing you've got out of the conference? What's your favorite thing? Let's put it that way. What's the favorite thing you got out of the conference?
First and foremost, I owe my attendance to the Amply podcast and seeing Peter Trost on there. I was cleaning the shop one day, and I've been listening to podcasts from you, from Amply, from a lot of people, and hearing Peter talk about the conference was the draw for me. And today I got to sit in on zonal pressure testing with the blower door, and looking at the zonal pressure difference between different spaces, which was really intriguing to me, and breaking down the blower door, seeing how much of that's actually coming from the attic and how much of that's coming from the garage if it's attached. And yesterday's session with TEC, Jake and Bill, really broke down the numbers on the TEC workflow, and breaking down the N factor between 5 is a large portal, a large lack of integrity in the structure, and 7 and beyond is death by 1,000 cuts, and making that connection of this is where I can break out my infrared camera and look for the mother hole that's costing you, or this is where I can get the smoke puffer out and see where I can just empower the client to, hey, seal these cracks and save yourself some money.
Quick commercial, Jeremy.
Sure.
6 weeks from now, there's another BPA conference in beautiful Saratoga, New York. It's a regional conference. It's going to be wonderful. Come and see us in New York.
The regional, that's one thing I love about BPA too, is they always do the regional events, and it's a great way to get little tidbits of the knowledge that you may not be able to come and get the whole thing, but get some chunks and, in your own backyard. That's always a beautiful thing, right? So let's see here. I got a few things I still want to ask you guys. How much time do we got left here? 250, probably about 10 minutes or so. So I'll save the last thing for last that I always do. But the one question that I wanted to ask Hal is, where do you see the HVAC industry, specifically out of all the trades, where do you see the HVAC industry going next? Now that we're here with the inverters and the technology and AI starting to make its way in the HVAC and stuff like that, like from your experience, like you've been in it a long time and you've seen a lot of changes along the way, and even more so because you're in home performance. So what is it you think, like where do you see the HVAC industry headed?
So in New York, they've had lots of heat pumps incentives, right? And they just now are finally saying, we've been incentivizing people based on the size of the heat pump. So a 5-ton heat pump got the biggest rebate. So guess what heat pump got put in all these houses? So they're now finally changing it, and they're saying, look, you're not going to get a heat pump rebate until, first of all, you turn in a blower door, and you have to calculate how many air changes per hour. You have to get it down below 10 air changes at a bare minimum to say the house is even close to being heat pump ready. So they're finally changing, towards the better. And
that's a long time in coming there.
Yeah, it certainly has been. But what that means is there's a lot of HVAC, in New York, there's close to 1,000 heat pump installers that work with this clean heat program. And there's about 75 contractors that are doing it shell work. So that's,
yeah, I hear it.
That's the ratio there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of HVAC contractors that need to learn about home performance and shell work.
Still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And John, I'll ask you the same question. Where do you see HVAC headed from your perspective?
Knowing what I know now, I would say that the old school folks who are set in their ways and their rules of thumb are either going to need to jump on the high performance ship, or they're going to need to swim to shore or sink on the way. I think that the things that used to pass for good enough, our industry has gotten away with good enough. The bar has been so low. Nobody called to complain. We're kicking butt. It doesn't work anymore. The mismatched systems with the mismatched ductwork, the temperature difference with the heat pump versus the temperature difference with the furnace. When we go from fossil fuel to electrification, the people who aren't on the high performance ship are, like I say, they're either going to sink or they're going to swim their butts off and try to get.
Your comment reminds me of Dom from National Comfort Institute.
Well, he's one of my mentors.
A few years ago, he said a thing that has stuck with me this whole entire time. He said, we went from working on Timexes to Swiss watches overnight. And he's like, and that is a scary thing for a lot of these guys out here. So I hope that the guys like you, I hope your prediction is right. I do hope it swims to the top instead of the bottom, because if not, I don't know what comes next, because the technology is not going to stop improving. So these guys have got to start learning where they have actually really never started learning, beyond just the typical HVAC school. And, there's still guys bending metal and stuff, that are 40 years old. Like, that's not going to fly anymore. So people need the education is paramount. I appreciate you guys being here today. We're almost up on the time. I have one more question. I ask all my guests this at the end of every show, so I'm going to let both of you guys answer it. It is, if society ended today and you had to write something on the wall to leave behind for the next society that was formed, what would that message be?
You think about it, Hal. I'll go ahead. I've been watching enough of Jeremy's podcast at the kitchen sink. I'm ready for this. I would borrow a line from my good friend Tyler. Honestly, I get emotional when I think about his line. He says, never stop learning. And he's also taught me that you're never alone. Because like Ty, the people in this industry who know the truth, they're here to share it with you. These rooms have been full of women and men of the trades who have opened their mouths, their hearts, their brains, and their arms to embrace us. And those who are willing will succeed. And those who won't will get what they sell.
Very well put. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I guess for me, do the right thing. We've always been about customers for life. And, sometimes you leave a job and you don't make money, but if you did the right thing for the customer, that money will come back to you someday. And so do the right thing.
1,000% love it. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. Al and John, it's been an awesome conversation. Thank you very much.